Let me just begin this morning by wishing all of you a Shana Tova. Should be a good, sweet, and healthy year, I hope for you, for your families. This is the 26th year that I've presided at High Holy Day services here at Bethel. It's an astonishing number to me. For Cantor King, his 27th year here leading us in services. And before I came to Bethel, I led High Holy Day services as a student rabbi, 4 different years, 2 different congregations. So all told, I've conducted High Holy Day services now for 30 years. Yeah. You should wait till applaud to the end of the sermon, actually. So 30 years, that's a lot of sermons, right? 30 years, a lot of sermons over the years. I want to tell you about the first of those sermons. It was the very first sermon I ever gave in my life. Erev Rosh Hashanah, so it was evening, Erev Rosh Hashanah. It was 1993, so it's 30 years ago. And it was a sanctuary in a congregation just outside of Boston, full of expectant congregants. Not this many people, but maybe 200, 250 people were there that night. I was very, very nervous. And after the Kiddush had been chanted that evening, I took my text, my sermon text, and I approached the podium that I had to speak from. My hands were shaking a little bit. I remember that, and I'm kind of trying to get myself organized there. And there was it was a little bit dim in the sanctuary. That sanctuary, I don't know, maybe, they weren't paying their electric bills or whatever it was. It was a congregation that was sort of fading away. And so on my podium, they had a kind of a desk lamp, and it was an old-style desk lamp. It was heavy. It had a bronze base, and some of you will remember that had like a long top with a long light bulb in it, and it bent towards the surface of the podium so you could see whatever was on the podium. And I had my paper spread out, and I began to speak. And just like 3 or 4 sentences in to what I was saying, I thought I'm going to be an orator, and I kind of gesticulated with my hands like that, and I crashed my right hand into that lamp, and it went flying in the air. This is a true story. And it landed I hit it hard enough, it landed a couple of feet away from where I was standing. And I look up, 250 faces looking back at me. I mean, dead silence. You could have heard a pin drop. I mean, really, you could have heard a pin drop. And then there's one older gentleman, as I later learned, longtime member of the congregation. And in the midst of this complete silence, this older fellow says one phrase, Oy Vey. Actually, an auspicious beginning to my rabbinical career. But I'd like to talk about that Oy Vey for a little bit this morning. And actually not Oy Vey only, although we'll get to that. But I'd like to talk about Yiddish in general. And you may be aware that Yiddish is having a moment, as a recent op-ed in the New York Times proclaimed. There are online Yiddish courses available. You can easily go online and take Yiddish as a formal language these days. Just recently, in New York City, Fiddler on the Roof was produced. It was off-Broadway. It was all in Yiddish, all the dialogue in Yiddish, all the songs in Yiddish. It got terrific reviews. It was very hard to get a ticket. My son was able to go to it, and he loved it. He said it was unbelievable. And probably some of you are I would guess some of you are watching TV shows where Yiddish is spoken fairly frequently by the characters, like Shtisel. If any of you have watched Shtisel, raise your hand if you watch a little bit of Shtisel, or Unorthodox also. There's Yiddish being spoken in that as well. So I didn't grow up speaking Yiddish, and I didn't grow up in a Yiddish-speaking home. I know some of you did, if not speaking Yiddish, at least growing up in a Yiddish-speaking home. But even those of us who didn't hear Yiddish in the homes that we were growing up in, even those of us who didn't hear it, we know, because we live in the Jewish community and we've grown up as Jews, we know Yiddish words and Yiddish phrases. So I want to have a little bit of a quiz. Okay? I'll give you a Yiddish word, and you tell me what it means. All right, fair enough? Okay. So I'm going to start with an easy one, nosh. Yeah, nosh. It's Yiddish. I mean, you don't realize it, but nosh is a Yiddish word, eat. Okay, how about shmata? Shmata's a rag. You guys are good. I could probably end the quiz right here, but yeah, shmata's a rag. Shmata was what, when I was a little kid and I had a blankie, it was called shmata, was the name of my blankie. Shmooze, yeah, like kind of kibbutz. I'm defining Yiddish by Yiddish, right? How about meshugana? Crazy, okay. Kvel? Yeah, it means like to be proud, to be happy, right? Kvel, okay? How about shanda? Yeah, it's the opposite, right? How about tuchas? No, don't translate that one. Don't translate. Okay, kvetch? Yeah, complain, okay. Bissel, what's a bissel? A little bit, good. Chutzpah? Yeah, nerve. Okay, good. You guys are grade A for easy. Very well done. Now, it's remarkable, think about it for a second, to think how many Yiddish words are now used in the American vernacular, right? Even if people don't use them, they know what they mean. People who are not Jewish, I mean, all across the country, like kvetch is used all the time, chutzpah is used all the time, bagel is a Yiddish word, that's used all the time, shmooze. So these are words that all Americans are familiar with these days. But Yiddish is a Jewish language. It's a Jewish, what do we call Yiddish? Our mama lashon, right? It means like our mother tongue. It's our language. And this morning, I would like to give you 3 Yiddish words or expressions that might help us better navigate the year that is about to begin. 3 Yiddish words or expressions. Okay. The first of them is Kanahara. Okay? Kanahara. Now, often, if people use that expression, they'll follow it by poo, poo, poo. Kanahara, poo, poo, poo. Okay? Where's Ben Kreschel? Ben, there's Ben. It's one of his favorite phrases. Now, it's hard to explain what Kanahara means, but I think we can do it by example. And I'd like to do it by call and response, like a responsive reading, okay? So I'll say a phrase, and you respond by Kanahara, and we'll get a sense of what it means, okay? So look at your children. They're so beautiful. Kanahara. Good. You're catching on already. How about, you should live live till you're 120. Kanahara. Okay, how about this one? Boy, the Orioles are doing great this year. Kanahara. I know they lost 4 straight, but they'll turn it around. No Kanaharas on that. Okay. So Kanahara actually it's actually 3 words. It's Kain, Ayin, Hara. Kain, Ayin, Hara. Kain, like most Yiddish, it's German and Hebrew. Kain is a Yiddish grammatical term that is used to negate a noun. So if you put Kain in front of a noun, it means like not that thing. If you were to say, I don't know how to say book in German, if you were to say Kain, that book, it's like not that book. So that's Kain. Ayin in Hebrew is I, and Hara means bad or the evil. And Kain, Ayin, Hara, over time, has kind of gotten mushed together into 2 words, Kanahara. But if you're going to literally translate it, what it means is, don't let that evil eye look at me, right? Not the evil eye, you're saying, not the evil eye. In other words, don't tempt fate. Don't tempt fate. That's what you're saying. So Kanahara is really an acknowledgement of the fact that our fates are not always in our control. Our fates are not always in our control. That's what you're really saying when you say Kanahara, okay? And it's, in my mind, a lot like the Unatana Tokef prayer in the Machzor. That's arguably the best-known prayer of all of the High Holy Day prayers, the Unatana Tokef. You know that probably from the phrases who will live and who will die, who by fire, who by water, all of that. That's kind of the middle of the Unatana Tokef prayer. But here's what it says at the end. Here's what it says at the end. Human life is like a withering grass, a passing shadow, a fading cloud. Chachalom ya'uf. Human life is like a vanishing dream. Like a vanishing dream. We work and we struggle and we strive and we do our best and we show up and we give of ourselves. And all the while we know that life is both fleeting and fragile, that circumstances often are out of our control, and that sometimes we need a little help in our lives to get through a day, a month, or a year. That's the way life works. Sometimes it's out of our control. Okay? Now the psalmist, knowing that also, asks the question, May ayin yavo ezri, means where will my help come from? Where will my help come from? And the psalmist answers his own question, and he says, Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. My help will come from God, from Adonai, who has made both the heavens and the earth. And you know, sometimes God can lift us up. Sometimes God can lift us up. But in my experience, more often, help comes from human beings. Help comes from family. Help comes from friends. Help comes from belonging to a community, from being connected to a synagogue. Those are the places where you can find help when you need help. Those are the places where you can find it. It comes from people who care, people who love, people who are willing to share with you in sorrow and pain, as well as in happiness and joy and celebration. And so when we say to one another throughout these holy days, when we say, L'shana tova tikatevu, right? May you be inscribed for a good year. Maybe it only makes sense after we say that, or after someone says it to us, say, you know, Kanahara. Kanahara. Because we hope for that sweet year. We hope for that sweet year. But we also sit here in shul on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, and you know you don't know what's going to happen in the year. That's the one thing you know, is that you don't actually know. Year doesn't come with a guarantee. Does not come with a guarantee. And that when the challenges come, what we have to figure out how to do is to be there for each other, to lift each other up and make our way through. Kanahara. I'd like to go back to the Oy, if I could. The Oy Vey, I told you I would come back to the Oy Vey. Those words that gentleman uttered on that Rosh Hashanah Eve 30 years ago that began my rabbinical career. Oy Vey is quintessentially Jewish. Quintessentially Jewish, maybe more than any other phrase. We use that term so often that the photographer Penny Wolin once said the following, Oy is not merely an ordinary word to Jews. It is an expression of an entire world view, okay? Oy. But how can you look around the world today? I mean, how can you look around the world today and not say Oy Vey? Rapid climate change, rising anti-Semitism, Israel's struggles, internal and external, and both internally and externally struggling existentially, gun violence, continuing war in Ukraine, COVID, still, how many years? COVID. Still an ever-present companion in our lives. Dysfunctional government. I mean, forget about the collapse of the New York Mets this year, right? If ever a year deserved an Oy Vey. And in a way, like I think that's our job as Jews. That's our job. Look out at the world. That's the job of the Jewish people. Witness what's actually going on. Look at it unflinchingly. Don't be afraid to see what's actually happening out there. Oh my God. Oy Vey means that's not okay. Oy Vey means it's not okay, and we know it's not okay. We recognize that. Oy Vey means something needs to be done, and we know we have to play a role in doing it. Oh my God. Oy Vey means we are anguished by what we see when we look out at the world. Sometimes you feel like the whole thing is falling apart. And yet, we're Jews. And so we do not lose our faith, and we hope, and we do not despair. Oy Vey, it's like a sigh of woe, you know, it's a Jewish sigh. Leave it to the Jews to make the sigh of woe simultaneously into a call to action. There is so much to be done. I mean, it's endless. So much to be done. Doesn't mean you can't do a little bit. So let us determine to, whatever your role is going to be, figure it out, and please do it. Please do it. Play a role. Play a role. And that leads me to the third thing. Because in any year, even the best of years, but in any year, you absolutely have to have this next Yiddish word at your disposal. Absolutely. Anyone want to guess? Mazel's good. I'll take mazel. I was thinking of schlepp, actually. Yeah. You got to be able to schlepp. I said a few minutes ago that it's my 26th high holidays here at Bethel. If you do the math, which some of you know I'm not that good at, but luckily I did this in advance, okay? If you do the math, that means that I came to Bethel in 1998, which I did. I was a young whippersnapper, you know. I was 32 years old. I had no gray hair, either on my head or my face. No gray hair. Tali was 4. Josh was 2. Meirav was not, because she hadn't been born yet. Now Tali and Austin are getting married this winter, so they're sitting in the back there. Joanne and Marshall Reef's son and my daughter Tali. Kanahara, yep. Josh and his boyfriend Sam are moving into an apartment they just bought in Brooklyn. And Meirav and her boyfriend Ravi just bought a dog. Now that's serious. You know, time goes by, right? Time goes by. So 98 I came here. Think how old you were in 1998. Believe it or not, because I know it sounds odd to you, because I know you think of me as a kid in a lot of ways. Believe it or not, when I came here in 98, many of you were younger than I am now. Some of you significantly younger. And again, I know you think of me as a kid, but the truth is we've aged together in more than a quarter century. And I'm just maybe a little bit behind some of you. And I often talk to members. You know, beloved friends. I mean, we've shared life together for decades. Like some really hard stuff and some wonderful, wonderful things. And I talk to members who have gone through that aging process, and I know that they're having tough times in their lives because they share it with me, you know, I know, and it's tough. And I'll say, you know, how you doing? And you know what they say to me? They say, Rabbi, I'm schlepping along. That's what they say. I'm schlepping along. I love that answer. I love it. I love that answer. If you're schlepping, it means you haven't given up. If you're schlepping, it means you are fighting. It means you still have hope. It means life still has meaning for you, even if it is hard sometimes. If you are schlepping, it means you're doing your best every day to make it a little bit better for yourself, for your family, maybe even for the world. Keep schlepping, right? So let's enter this new year with heads held high, eyes wide open, see the world for what it really is, despite how troubled it is. If we need to sigh, let's sigh together. Let's sigh together with our Oy Veys, but in sighing, find comfort in community and friends and family. Let's hope for a little luck. Kanahara. I mean, God knows we need it. A little bit of luck for us, for the Orioles, right? Kanahara. We'll all need luck at some point. And we can start this new year knowing we are all accomplished schleppers, one and all. one and all, accomplished schleppers, and that if, and more likely when, the journey gets challenging, and you know that it will, we can find a way through. And that if we schlep well, it's an art, right? Together, we really can make a better world for our families, for our friends, for our community, for all people in all places. In that new world, that better world, may we also find a sweet, happy, and healthy year. And to that, let us say, Kanahara. Shabbat Shalom, Shana Tova.